Hello, this is our presentation on the Red Summer by Porum, Claire, Serin, Brandon, Joseph, and Jonathan.
After the end of World War One, Black Americans who fought in Europe would come home. African American veterans returning from the war were seen as a threat due to their military service. Because of their military service, white people feared that Black people would be unwilling to submit to the previous system of racism. African Americans who were forced to stay in subordination could now fight back using their new gained knowledge of military training. Many African American veterans had the desire to fight back against this racial violence, and many Black leaders encouraged the Black veterans to fight for their dignity. Meanwhile, World War One saw the mass emigration of African Americans coming from the rural South and going to the industrial North and Midwest. This was called the Great Migration, where approximately 500,000 African Americans would migrate to northern cities. However, the northern whites would not welcome these Black people. What was the Great Migration? The Great Migration took place from 1910 to 1940, where approximately 6 million Black people moved from the South up towards northern, Midwestern, and Western states to escape racial violence and oppressive Jim Crow laws in search for freedom. During 1917, where the war effort expanded and more men were sent to fight in the war, there was a decline in labor supply. This provided the opportunity for Black people to take up these jobs. This would create tension among the white people as they believed that Black people were taking their jobs, housing, and security from them. Rising tensions between the Black and white communities would ultimately amount to mass violence. The Red Summer was an outbreak of racial violence that occurred during 1919, where a series of lynching and riots swept across America. There were approximately 25 riots and mobs, 97 lynchings, and a 3-day massacre in Arkansas, where 200 Black people would be killed. The Ku Klux Klan, which was shut down by the government after the Civil War, saw a resurgence in popularity, and they carried out lynchings across the South.
So some of the earlier riots that happened during the Red Summer. So for the first one on April 13th was the Jenkins County riot. So Joe Ruffin, one of the wealthiest people of Jenkins County, attempted to cover his friend Scott's $400 bail using a checkbook. The two white cops refused to accept and claimed that cash was needed. Ruffin tried to pull Scott out of the car and was struck in the head by one of the cops. The two white cops were killed alongside with Scott, resulting in the arrival of "quote unquote" hundreds of white men who burned buildings, killed, and injured several Black people. On May 10th, for the Charleston riot, on the night of Saturday, May 10th, five white sailors claimed to have gone scammed by a Black man. Because they were unable to find the man, they ended up randomly attacking innocent Black residents and businesses. Angry Black Charlestonians retaliated, causing a violent riot, where eventually 6 people were killed and dozens were injured. Alongside these riots, we have riots that happened in Longview, Texas, and Bisbee, Arizona. So, in July 10th through July 12th, behind proactive efforts to defend the Black community, prominent leaders such as local teacher and newspaper correspondent Samuel L. Jones and Dr. Calvin P. Davis made attempts to quell the emergence of violent hate crimes throughout Longview, Texas. Despite these efforts, violent retaliation by the white community resulted in the establishment of martial law, where 17 white men were arrested for attempted murder, 9 other white men were arrested for arson, and 21 Black men were arrested for assault and attempted murder. On July 3rd in Bisbee, Arizona, in preparation for our Independence Day parade, active members of the Army's segregated 10th Cavalry Regiment, which were nicknamed the Buffalo Soldiers, entered the highly segregated town to participate in the event. Following aggressive remarks by local white law enforcement, both groups became engaged in a large-scale shootout that left dozens wounded and a resounding mark of violence and tension within the community. So adding on to these riots, we have another large riot, which was the Washington, D.C. riot. One of the most notable and protracted events during the Red Summer was the riot in Washington, D.C. in 1919. A false account that a black man had attacked a white woman served as the catalyst for the violence. After this event, accusations of assault from black men were often based on merely looking at or accidentally bumping into a white woman, smirking, winking, getting too close, or even being disagreeable. The mere accusation of sexual impropriety, even without evidence or facts, often aroused a mob and resulted in lynching before the judicial system could or would act. This sparked days of turmoil with several episodes of beatings, stabbings, shootings, which in turn led to a white mob targeting African Americans in the city. Residents of African Americans' descent organized in reaction to defend their communities. Approximately 15 people died to this riot.
On July 21st, 1919, at least 8 people were killed during a celebration to honor the return of the Black veterans from World War I. Allegedly, a Black soldier was involved in a fight during the celebration, which led to the appearance of white police. The police attempted to make arrests, causing a riot among the Black neighborhoods. The city authorities deployed the police reserves and requested help from the Navy. This riot between the white officers and the Black neighborhood residents became the catalyst for other future riots. On September 28th through the 29th, 1919, a race riot occurred in Omaha, Nebraska, leading to many injuries and the death of 3 men. One was an African American civilian named Will Brown was lynched, and the other were 2 white rioters at the scene. Many who were injured were local policemen who arrived to downtown Omaha shortly after thousands of white rioters set fire to the local Douglas County courthouse. The mayor, Edward Parsons Smith, was also attempted to be hanged. The riot was started by the doubling of the number of African Americans in Omaha, as they had the third largest Black population in the West at the time of in the era of the Reconstruction and Great Migration. Most jobs in the area of the meatpacking industry and most of the working class white Americans became hostile towards all racial minorities, including the Greek community at the time. The African Americans became enraged after a moral squad shot and killed an African American bellhop. On the other hand, the white Americans triggered more violence after 19-year-old Agnes Blowback was allegedly raped on September 25th.
Uh, Considered the most violent riot of the Red Summer, the Chicago riot occurred 2 days after federal troops pulled out of Washington, D.C. A black teenager was wrongfully murdered by a group of white men. The teenager was swimming when he happened to drift off. Sorry, when he happened to drift onto the white side of the segregated area. He was then stoned by a group of white men and eventually drowned. The police refused to arrest the men whom black witnesses held responsible, and the news spread, distorted on each side. Soon, mobs of both races formed and violent fights broke out. The violence lasted for 13 days, even while the state militia was deployed on the 4th day. The aftermath of the riots left 23 blacks and 15 whites dead, 537 injured, and 1,000 black families homeless.
Um, my camera's not working right now, but the Red Summer in Chicago served as a vital call to African Americans and helped them emerge from the violent and bloody year into a greater sense of pride, identity, and community. In response to the Red Summer in September 1919, the Blood Brotherhood was formed in the North as a force of armed resistance against further violence. Many protests and appeals were forwarded to the federal government, and this new sense of community was a part of the foundation of this eventual civil rights movement.
These are our sources. That's the end of the presentation.